My parents are very famous, but I can only see them on TV. They ran on the front line of war, saying that it was the environment dangerous, so they threw me to my grandmother in the countryside to raise me. But later, they adopted a colleague's daughter, took her with them, and made up for all the debts they owe to me. She became their baby and could stay by her parents without having to be with her cold screen. Later, when they finally remembered me, I completely forgot about my feelings for them after a high fever. I was sick, not too serious, but it lasted for a long time. The reason was that my parents' adopted daughter and I bet to see who can climb to the top of the mountain as soon as possible. Those who win can ask their parents to hold a parent-teacher meeting for him, her. When I tried my best to reach the top in the wind and dew, I saw my parents and my foster sister's family of 3 smilingly setting up a tent, preparing to take photos and record the sunrise. Seeing me, the foster girl smiled and said, "He only said who will arrive first in the competition, but he didn't say how to arrive." She said, "Yi-ing, haven't you figured it out yet? On the same road, you have to reach your destination, only walk through my own feet, but I have my parents' support, you have lost from the beginning." The parents holding the camera stood behind her. They saw our conversation and figured out what happened. They were a little embarrassed. They were about to call me to watch the sunrise together, but they saw that I turned around and left without any nostalgia. "Let him go." The angry voice of his mother came from behind. "Why can't he be as sensible as Yao Yao? If he wants him to be like Yao Yao, know how to get close to his parents, and not to have a cold face all day long, how can we ignore it?" I couldn't help but feel a little funny when I heard this. My parents said that I never knew how to be soft-hearted and never knew how to get close to them. But in the past 15 years of their absence, I couldn't even see them, so how could I get close to them? How can I do something that no one has taught me? After I got home, I fell ill. I was obviously suffering from a little cold, but I had a high fever and was drowsy and had no strength at all. Before I completely fainted, I called myself to call an ambulance and then fell into darkness. During the coma period, I saw my childhood again. When I was very young, I could always see my parents on TV, and I could only see my parents on TV. They are famous journalists across the country, like-minded, and after graduation, they run on the front line of various important news occasions for common ideals. Later, they even took the initiative to apply to go abroad and go to the battlefield, where they eat and live with the refugees who were devastated by the war. Before leaving, they left a photo of me. In the picture, I was still in my infancy, being held in my arms by a gentle smile, and the family of 3 happily snuggled together. At that time, I didn't know that this was the last time I was hugged by my parents in my lifetime. It was also this time. I had made me upset and beat my chest and stamped my feet countless times in my childhood, and hated myself for not being smarter than before, so that I could know that I was in my parents' arms. What does it feel like? That must be an experience worth remembering in my life. Unfortunately, there is no if. Communication in that era was not quite developed, so I was given to my grandmother who lived alone in the countryside. The old man is not very good at using the little spiritual communication left by his parents to her. At the beginning of every month, he would walk more than 10 miles to the post office in the town with a cane to see if there were any letters sent to our grandparents and grandchildren. When I get older, she will take me with me. Every time I go out, I always put on new clothes that I don't want to wear, and then wear 2 flowers on the shiny black braids that my grandma combed me. I thought my parents could know me through letters, so I must dress up beautifully and go to see them. But I have never received a letter. It was not until the 3rd grade of elementary school that the Chinese teacher assigned the task of writing a letter to my mother that I suddenly realized that the letter was sent one-sidedly, and my parents would not suddenly appear in the post office and listen to me tell them. I miss them so much. Fortunately, there are no letters, but there is still a TV. My parents have been abroad for many years and have not been home for the new year for 7 or 8 years. Occasionally, they would ask someone to come to their hometown to buy some electrical appliances for their grandma's house. When the 45-inch color TV landed at home, it attracted many people in the village to watch. Grandma was not polite, so she asked everyone to come in and watch TV together. After installing the antenna, the TV turned on and happened to hit the evening news. The host in the suit and tie said a few words, and the picture turned around and a pair of men and women wearing simple clothes appeared on the screen with microphones. At that moment, my eyes lit up, and the person in the news was my parents. In front of the smoke of war, they briefly introduced the local situation and called on the whole society to lend a helping hand to these refugees who were suffering from the war. I looked at their faces that were much more vicissitudes than in the photo, and walked to the TV in a daze, Mom and Dad. I raised my head and called out loudly, but they couldn't get a response. Since then, watching the news has become my unshakable hobby. They won't be there in the news every day, but as long as I have it, I can always have a good dream on that night. In the dream, my parents will take me by my side, I can go on an adventure with them, and they will carry me in my arms, rub my head and call me baby. Later I went to junior high school and went to study in the town. At that time, mobile phones had begun to become increasingly popular. One day after school, I took out the Xiao Ling Tong from the cabinet next to my grandma's bed and hadn't turned on for a long time and recharged him again. When I found the number with my parents' name written from the address book, my heartbeat roared uncontrollably. The phone number was not available. Xia Ling Tong has been in ode a long time. Later, I saved up money for a long time, silently chanting the numbers representing my parents every day. Finally on my birthday, I gave the door $10. The owner of the convenience store borrowed his cell phone and dialed the number. The phone rang for a long time. Just when I thought no one would answer, I was so tired that the gentleness lingered in my dreams day and night. The male voice rang. Dad. I shouted his name excitedly. Tell him. I'm a baby. But he was silent for a long time. It seems that I can't remember my hometown. There is another baby. When he spoke, the sound is a little quick. He said, Baby, Dad is busy with work, so I'll contact you later. You should listen to Grandma's words in your hometown. After saying that, he didn't wait for me to reply. So he hung up the phone directly. I held the cell phone that was warmed by the temperature on my ears. I felt a little disappointed. This is the first time in my life that I have talked to my father. The child's intuition is actually keen. On that day, I suddenly realized one thing. My parents didn't take it for granted that I missed me as much as I did. Since then, I still can't change my habit of waiting for news in front of the TV. Just a while to wait. No longer as excited as before. Once, I fantasized that I am the girl I am loved. I thought my parents wanted to see me through the screen too. But now I finally understand, they don't seem to love me. For them, it was because they had been separated for too long. A strange existence that failed to leave much impression. The turn of opportunity appeared in my high school. At that time, in order for the university to enter the news industry, study hard all day long. High school needs to live in school. Of course I'm gone. An opportunity to watch the news every day. Waiting for self-study. I saw my grandma standing at the school gate with a cane. I walked to her. As soon as I saw me, she spoke excitedly. Baby, baby, your parents are back. Let's pick them up. At that moment, the book in my hand fell to the ground. I feel like I'm in another world. Only the sound of breaking through the air like tinnitus was left. I'm going to meet my parents. They are finally no longer the cold images that only exist on the screen. I can throw myself into their arms and act spoiled to them. I can throw myself into their arms. Tell them about these years. The certificate I received. Show them. Seeing that I was born in the countryside. No special skills. These commendations. I won the first prize every year. It's the only thing I can do. I wonder if they will be proud of me. Grandma and I rushed to the station. During the waiting time, I've taken care of my hair countless times. I bought a pack of wet tissues quietly. Wiping your face, using the reflection of the armrests of the station seats. Organize your appearance over and over again. I felt intermittently regretful. You should wash your hair before coming out. I'm afraid that the first impression I left on them is bad. I also think that since I am my parents, you shouldn't be disgusted. At that time, I've entered puberty. The confused self-esteem has already taken root and sprouted. I think my parents neglected me so much when they were young. When I see them, I should be more reserved, too. This is the same as them. My grandma and I couldn't wait for our parents. When I sat at the station until the middle of the night, Dad's friend came to find Grandma. He said his father called him. Say they are staying in the capital. Just stay for 1 week. I will set off when the matter is handed over. There is no need to go back to my hometown. They made us not have to wait. I listened to the news in a daze. Gone with a groggy mind. I just think they will do this. But I felt more contempt for them in my heart. I think Grandma is old. Even I know how to be filial to her. But they made their parents' expectations fail again and again. Maybe they are not as beautiful as I thought. Maybe they are not even as good as me. After going back, I had a high fever. During my illness, I visited my uncle by chance. I found out the reason for their return to China this time. The battlefield they have been in is completely destroyed by artillery fire. Those attacks came too suddenly. The reporters evacuated one step slower. Many people were injured. In order to record the city under the artillery fire at the first time, my parents forced themselves to the end. Their best friend, a photographer who followed them through life and death, also died. They bear the lives and expectations of their friends. Therefore, he is even less willing to stop. After returning to China for rest, he quickly prepared and headed to the front line of the war. To express guilt, they asked someone to buy new mobile phones for me and my grandma. He also called me on his own initiative. But we are really unfamiliar. I made a call and made a few polite words. Then there was no more language. Before hanging up, Dad asked me to study hard. He said that parents were waiting for me in front of me. But my attention was all over the little girl coming from their microphone. That crisp Dad. Yes, they adopted a colleague's daughter. That girl who is 5 months younger than me is very pitiful. Her name is Su Yao. My mother died when she was very young. Now I lost my dad again. My parents took her away. War is cruel and dangerous. But they brought Su Yao with them. Later, maybe I really felt sorry for Su Yao. In order to ensure that Su Yao can grow up happily and safely, they returned to their country. No more journalist. Instead, they each found a job within the system. Settled down in the city. They used all the savings they had saved over the years to support their sister. Give her the best education and family atmosphere. No one ever remembers being forgotten from beginning to end. Mother and daughter in the countryside. Slowly, the beautiful guesses about my parents began to dissipate. I no longer longed for their love. The journalism major that I once kept in my heart, I cancelled it from the plan. Grandma often comforted me when she saw this. She said, "No matter what, Grandma always likes the baby. So the baby should treat himself well and love himself. Grandma is happy. I'm getting harder and harder in my studies. Want to work hard as soon as possible? Let Grandma live a good life." But things don't go as expected. In the second year of high school, when my grandma goes out to buy groceries, I stepped on the puddle at the door and fell. No one told her to live alone as usual. Even promised on the phone. When I go back on the monthly vacation, I will make my favorite braised pork ribs for me. However, before the monthly break was over, I met my parents who returned to my hometown to deal with my grandmother's funeral. They stood at the door of the principal's office, and behind them was a wheat-skinned girl. As soon as she saw me, she snorted coldly and turned her head away. She is really confident and she is full of joy and anger on her face. This led to my parents, the middle-aged man and woman in decent clothes, standing in front of me. They were relatively speechless, with a strange and awkward atmosphere. Until they told me that my grandma had passed away, they came to pick me up because they followed my grandma's last wish and wanted to take me to the city for raising me. At that moment, the whole world seemed to collapse. I forgot how I cried and asked them to take me to see my grandma, but in the end I saw only a cold coffin. They comforted me for granted, without grandma, there will be mom and dad in the future. Their comforting words were as unfamiliar and stiff as if they were chanting lines. Su Yao, who was adopted by them, grimaced at me from behind and muttered, "Don't you owe you anything? When you are suffering in the countryside with your parents, you don't know where to enjoy your happiness." She looked very unfairness. Such muttering words completely ignited my anger. I ignored my parents' obstruction and rushed up and beat her. Several times in the middle, my parents wanted to separate us, but failed. Until Su Yao was torn off a bunch of hair by me, and the screams cut through the silent cemetery. A crisp slap from her sounded. The mother, who has always been praised as a lady, looked at her palms in a daze, then at my swollen cheeks, and then at my senses that she wanted to come forward to touch me, but I turned my head away. Behind me, Grandma's kind smile was printed on the black and white photos. I finally realized that in this world, I was completely alone. Although I have found my parents, they already have another daughter, and they will make up for all the guilt they feel for me. In the end, they even hurt me for her. I don't expect them anymore, nor do I love them anymore. From now on, love yourself well. In the dream, an old and kind voice sounded, and the gentle tone was so familiar. He said, "They are ignorant. They lose the best baby and they will regret it." I couldn't help but wipe the tears from the corners of my eyes with the back of my hand. When I woke up, I felt my heart empty. All the emotions that had been derived from my desire for my parents' love disappeared, and I was calmer than anyone else. Seeing that I woke up, the nurse who was checking the rounds showed a look of surprise. "You are finally awake. You have been in a coma for 4 days." As he said that, he was about to call my parents. After a while, she came back with a little embarrassed look on her face. "Your mother was still here just now. There should be something urgent to contact now. She should come over later. I know what's going on." Today is Su Yao's parent-teacher meeting. After the college entrance examination, we tried our best to compete for our results. Finally, in the last diagnostic test, I took away the first place Su Yao has always occupied. But Su Yao said, "Even if I get the first place in the exam, it's useless. My parents won't pay attention to it. They will still only attend Su Yao's parent-teacher meeting." I was dissatisfied for a moment, so I had that mountain climb with her. The competition. Thinking about it now, it was just an unnecessary battle of intention. Parents' love is illusory, but knowledge is real. I have already got the ranking I want, so there is no need to compete with Su Yao. In the evening, my mother finally arrived. The nurse only opened her cell phone half an hour ago. She arrived in a hurry, carrying a box of cake in her hand. She might be a little guilty, but when the nurse told her that I had been discharged from the hospital early, she threw herself into empty mother, and the guilt on her face instantly turned into anger. I don't have a cell phone, can't take a taxi, and I don't have the change to take the bus, so I can only walk home. It was easy for my mother to catch up with me halfway through the car. Before she could shake the car window completely, her angry voice came, "Xiaoying, why are you so ignorant? Are you polite? Go home by yourself after school." From 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., I waited for her. I looked at her calmly. "I don't have money, you only paid for the medical treatment and hospitalization for me. I was very hungry and couldn't buy food, so I could only go home first." She seemed to have never thought I would say this, and she was slightly stunned when she heard this, then turned her face away and asked me to get in the car. I sat down obediently. She spoke awkwardly in the front row. "I have delayed some things for a while and bought you a gift to apologize. You will never get angry with your parents for this little thing." I looked around calmly when I heard this, and my eyes fell on the cake box. It is my sister's favorite brand and taste. It seems that this is a reward for her? As if she was touched by her worries, she took a deep breath and was about to explode again, but at the moment she looked up, she met my calm eyes from the rearview mirror without the grievance or anger of the past, just calmness. Narrate this matter in a vain way. She was a little surprised and asked me, "Xiaoying?" I gently curled the corners of my mouth and showed a business-oriented smile. When I got home, the hospital should have told my father about what happened during the day. At the dining table, he cursed his mother rarely, telling her not to care about this and that in the future. After saying that, he spoke in a gentle tone, "This matter is wrong for Mom and Dad. Xiaoying should not be angry. Mom and Dad will definitely change it in the future." His voice revealed a hint of guilt. From beginning to end, no one mentioned the reason for my illness again, and they wanted to embellish this matter. In the past, I might feel wronged, but now I just want to spend more time studying, and there is no need to argue with irrelevant people. My calm voice came out. The people and things that are irrelevant are certainly not worth my anger. I ate slowly under their scrutiny. I didn't prepare the fruit after meals for them anymore, nor did I want to pinch my legs and rub my shoulders for anyone, so I turned to the floor to do the questions. It was past 9 o'clock, and the knock on the door came. "Xiaoying, are you free now? You want to chat with your parents?" Dad's cautious voice came from the door. This is a treatment I have never had since moved in. I frowned and looked at the physics question under my pen, and couldn't help but whisper, "No." Finally, I politely rejected them, but they became persistent and must talk to me. I knew they thought I was angry about being neglected and thought it would be enough to coax me. But gradually, they began to get angry because they found that I really didn't care about them at all. I no longer wake up early to prepare a hearty breakfast and refreshments for them, just to say good morning to them as soon as possible every day. They often say that I do things bluntly and don't know how to be like Su Yao, and I want to be good at my parents. But they took it seriously because I was good to them. Just like when they see me in the morning, they will subconsciously reach out to the teacup, even though there is no longer the hand-ground coffee and flour tea I have had to worry about for them. They attributed my behavior to being angry and wanted to talk to me several times, but I refused. After repeated several times, they finally felt guilty. I didn't send Su Yao to school anymore. My father came to pick me up for the first time, and I didn't refuse. The pace of senior high school is already tight, and I don't want to waste more time on the road. My father sent Su Yao. When he was not here, he saw that I could go to school by myself, but he always refused to go to school with a stubborn temper. In the end, it was a last resort that parents gave each of them. The unit where we work now is not going well with our school. After picking up Su Yao a few times, he began to complain in front of me openly and secretly. I no longer give in as sensible as before, just pretending that I didn't hear it. Over time, his eyes became more and more dissatisfied when he looked at me, but I no longer cared about his opinion of me. No need to please them anymore. After that, my life ushered in unprecedented peace and relaxation. One day, Su Yao rejected her mother's car and clamored to ask her father to send her away. I thought that based on my mother's dissatisfaction with me these days, once my father stopped sending me, my mother would definitely let go of her hands, and then I would have to walk to school. But my mother did not say anything, but just asked me to get in the car with a dark face. At that moment, the secret joy in Su Yao's eyes turned into panic, and I was also surprised. On the way to school that day, my mother didn't know what she was thinking, so she was distracted and accidentally rear-ended the car in front of her. When the owner, who was covered in muscles and looked quite fierce, walked out of the car, he was panicked with his naked eyes. If it weren't for picking up and dropping off us, he actually rarely drove. If there was an accident at this moment, he couldn't help but feel a little panicked. Just when he was helpless about calling his father, he didn't want to be wasted too much time, so I got out of the car, calmly took my phone, called the insurance company, and then stepped forward to negotiate with the owner who was rear-ended. He watched the whole process, and he wanted to speak but stopped several times. Fortunately, we were in the village, and the scoundrels who often argued with me, my grandma and I were both old and young, but the owner was easy to talk to, and the storm finally passed without any danger. And my mother, who witnessed the whole process, since then, the dissatisfaction from the beginning gradually became more and more appreciative in her eyes when she looked at me. That night, she took the initiative to tell her father about this at the dining table, and the latter couldn't help but praise my actions when he heard this. That day, they praised me without hesitation, picked up food for me, and took care of my recent situation at school. But I was not interested in answering. I picked up the dishes that Su Yao liked in the bowl that they picked up, and ate the meal. Then, in the ugly look of the family, calmly put down the bowls and chopsticks, turned to the stairs to review. But such alienation did not hit them, they were more interested in me. After discovering one of my advantages, they seemed to have opened Pandora's box, unable to hide their curiosity and exploration of me. Once upon a time, they thought I was dull and boring and didn't want to get along with me. But now the more they pay attention to me, the more they can discover my strengths. I have excellent grades, ambitious, willing to help my classmates, and have always had a good reputation among the group. I love cleanliness, I can clean the house neatly and brightly, fry it well, and even weave and plant these skills that I learned when I was in the countryside to live a better life with my grandma, which made them feel novel and surprise. So, in their eyes, my dullness has become calmness, and boredom has become sensible. They observed me all the time, just as my mother looked at me, and the thick old photo album in her hand made a surprise sound. In this album, they are journalists, every moment they are recorded by the paper media. These photos are carefully cut out and solemnly placed under the yellowed plastic protective film. With the decline of print media over the years, some pictures may not be found even when they return to China, but now they are the same and are kept in the album without falling. Xiaoying, are these collected by you specifically for your parents? Mom's voice was a little choked. She looked very moved. She stretched out her arm to hug me, but I avoided it sideways. She didn't expect me to react like this. She stood there awkwardly and raised her hand to wipe her tears. Then her eyes lit up again, as if she was sure that all I did now was just a favorite child. To attract parents' attention, the means used are just the means. He turned around and rushed to find his father excitedly to share what she had accidentally seen and prepared for them. But she didn't know that I wanted to take out this album and throw it away. 3 days later, she and her father saw the album in the scrap station at the entrance of the community. When he came to me angrily with the album, I spoke calmly. I was thrown directly in the trash can, but I was picked up by someone. Next time I will throw it away. In one sentence, he completely ignited his anger that had been accumulated for a long time. A year later, he raised his hand to me again, but was stopped by his father in time. Let's go out and say. My father tried his best to soothe my mother's emotions. When he took him away, he looked at me and ignored him and just went back to the house to continue reciting the English words. I don't know how they discussed it, but the storm has subsided since then. They became more and more concerned about me, which also made Su Yao dissatisfied. He made trouble many times, hoping that his parents' attention would return to him, but the effect was not very good. Instead, his own grades were gradually dragged down. He is actually very smart, but in the past, he had to take turns coaxing his parents to cooperate well in his studies. now he has gone astray and his grades have fallen back thousands of miles. Finally, when the college entrance examination was 3 months away, my parents noticed his regression. That day, Su Yao was taken home from school while crying. His class teacher asked his mother to go to school to have a heart-to-heart talk, and his words were full of warnings and criticisms about Su Yao's current situation. In the past, my mother received honors and praises when she came to the school as Su Yao's parents, and this was the first time she was scolded. He felt embarrassed and couldn't help but say a few words to Su Yao. And Su Yao kept crying from the unconscious sentence, "Why can't you be as sensible as Ying?" which makes people feel at ease. My mother was so panicked that she had to bring him back first. As soon as he got home, Su Yao rushed into my room and threw my stuff all over the ground like crazy. When I got home, I saw such a messy scene. Seeing me, Su Yao's emotions that had just calmed down broke out again. "You go. You go. You are an outsider. When my parents and I were struggling to survive in the rain of bullets, you didn't know where you were. Why can you always enjoy your happiness?" He roared at me with red eyes, like a lion defending his territory, trying his best to drive away the invaders. Yao Yao's parents looked at him, not knowing what to say, but in the end they turned their begging eyes to me. What are they begging me? I hope I will say something soft to please Su Yao. Or do you hope I will admit it in a low voice that I am an outsider in this family? I looked at my parents who wanted to throw the problem to others at this time, and couldn't help but sneer from the bottom of my heart. Yes, it is such a person who only cares about pursuing his dreams and leaves his elderly mother and young daughter to the countryside without any concern. It is such a person who is so moved by himself that he is infinitely indulged in the adopted stepdaughter. Let her be condoned to be lawless at the age when she deserves the most discipline. They have always been such people, innocent and cowardly, and in the deepest part of their bodies, they are filled with selfish and cold blood. They may be a good pair of journalists, but they are by no means the ones I should admire. Grandma, it turns out that you are not wrong. They are not worthy of my love. I should leave those loves to myself. I didn't say anything anymore, crossed the mess all over the ground, leaned over and took out a few of the most commonly used clothes, and after a little tidying up, I turned around and walked out of the door. "Xiaoying, where are you going?" Mom shouted behind her. "I'll live on campus." This time, I didn't look back. I said Su Yao was right. This place has never been my home, and my parents are not my parents. "What do you mean?" The father, who had been silent, became louder at this moment. I ignored it and quickly left the door. The mother behind Xiaoying chased after me. For the first time, he spoke to me, even his voice trembling, as if he also felt that after this departure, I would have nothing to do with them. As if she was afraid of hearing my answer, she suddenly raised her voice. "I know you have resentment in your heart. I feel that your parents have ignored you in the past, but your parents already know that they are wrong and we are also correcting it. Whether it is Yao Yao or you are all parents' daughters, why can't you live in peace?" "No." I spoke firmly, "It was you who indulged Su Yao's willfulness, and it was you who couldn't tell the truth between your two daughters. With parents like you will never be able to live in peace." The blood on his face disappeared in an instant after hearing this. This was the first time he had heard such straightforward and sharp words from me. He seemed to want to say something, but I interrupted. I said if I had a choice, I didn't want to be your daughter anymore. You'd better be as good as before, just as Su Yao had one daughter. After saying that, I turned around and left without waiting for her to react. This time, I walked very lightly. In the lonely and depressing time, the love that had longed for 17 years finally turned into shackles and bound me. Today I am finally liberated. In the future, I will love myself. I said to myself in my heart. I want to live more excitingly with my grandma's expectation for me. The school-based residence was done very smoothly. I just need to tell the teacher that I want to concentrate on reviewing in school. As the only Tsinghua and Peking University seedlings in the grade, the school is very willing to provide convenience for me, and my class teacher wants to give up all his teacher dormitories. I don't have to go back every day to suffer from the family of 3. My review efficiency has become higher, and I devote myself to the ocean of knowledge. The closer the time comes, the more confident I feel about the upcoming exam. After I moved out of my house, Su Yao did not become cheerful again, but she became even more gloomy. One day after class, he stopped me downstairs in the dormitory. His eyes were red as he looked at me. "You won. Your parents are thinking of you at home every day now, and they blame me for being ignorant and forcing you away. Are you very proud now?" He said, his voice choked. "Yi Ying, why are you? I was the one who suffered with them abroad in those years. Even if you are your biological child. I have no right to take away my parents' love. Backslash. I remember after adopting you. You only stayed abroad for 2 months. And the rear of the war zone where you were at that time was very peaceful, backslash. There is no death threat you often call it. Backslash. I couldn't help but interrupt him. I said you only remember the shock you were in the first place. But I can't see them growing up healthily, and even gave up the most important journalist career, backslash. Always only care about your own feelings. Ignore others' efforts. Backslash. From this point of view, you guys are very compatible, backslash. It's a natural family. Backslash. What do you know? Backslash. Hearing this, Su Yao yelled at me. Backslash. My mother has no choice. My dad threw me to his relatives and went to the war zone. Over the years, I have been living under someone else's roof and have been cursing my eyes. Finally, I have a home again and I have parents who are willing to take care of me, but as soon as you appear, you have a look. It ruined everything about me. Backslash. He looked extremely broken, stood there and cried, and I just looked at him calmly and told him, if you continue to indulge in it, you will only destroy your future. Backslash. He couldn't listen, and his eyes were still red from crying, saying that he was almost gone, and he had a future. Backslash. I didn't say anything more, bypassed him and prepared to go back to the dormitory. Before leaving, he grabbed the corner of my clothes and sobbed and asked me to swear, just treat me begging you, Yi Ing. They only have you in their hearts now, and every day they see things related to you at home will cry. I admit I'm not as good as you, but I'm really scared, don't come back. Backslash. I looked down at him squatting on the ground, and his humble look could no longer connect him with the confident and bright girl when I first met. Backslash. Su Yao said that they really regretted my parents. These days, they kept calling me and even ran to school to find me. They took the gifts they had turned out from their homes, and used to make them either sad or surprised. They were surprised by my ingenuity and talent, and when they met again, I was no longer willing to even call them my parents. Backslash. Later, I couldn't bear it and asked the head teacher for help. I explained my family situation to the head teacher. The school attached great importance to this matter, but negotiated with my parents several times, and they really didn't come again. And Su Yao also wanted to love his home and not the future as he said. Backslash. As the college entrance examination approaches, his mind has not returned to his studies at all. He only thinks about how to show his presence in front of his parents every day. His teachers have given up on him, and even his parents are ready to let him repeat the class. But Su Yao felt it didn't matter, and this rebellion made him taste the sweetness. His parents were circling around him every day, and he was the only one in his heart. So he became more and more rebellious, which made both parents and teachers exhausted him. Backslash. I can't comment on this, after all, everyone has their own destiny. Backslash. Soon, the college entrance examination came, and I performed steadily all the way. When I walked out of the examination room, I felt relaxed all over. In my eyes, the test questions are not difficult. Once upon a time, in order to make up for the education gap between the town and the city, I spent countless days and nights of work on the questions. Now everything is rewarding. I am very sure of my grades, which is enough for me to go thousands of miles away to study the top university that everyone yearns for. Backslash. Su Yao was in dismay, and he handed in the mathematics subject in white papers. Since I knew about it, my parents kept sighing. Now they really feel regret in their hearts and miss me more and more. They urged me to go back more and more eagerly. Backslash. This time, I didn't refuse. I need to go home to pack my things, and some things need to be said in person. Backslash. I didn't really pack a lot of luggage. After a box was packed, half of it was filled with memories of my grandma. When I was in elementary school, she knitted a wool glove for me. When I got the first time I got the certificate, she bought me a piece of land, and the storybooks she brought me back to and from the town for 30 miles. Every piece is a proof that I have been loved well. Backslash. Don't come back when you leave. Su Yao, who was afraid that I would take more things, stared at me throughout the whole process, said gloatingly. Backslash. But the couple kept me when I left. Let's go out for a meal together, said Dad, just give us a chance to atone for sins. Backslash. Is it okay to talk about Grandma? I pondered for a moment without refusing. Backslash. The place for the meal is set in the forest park, which is an outdoor picnic. Ignoring their different expressions, we sat together like the most ordinary family of four. Backslash. Seeing that everyone was not in a high mood, Dad took the initiative to open up the topic. What he said was the matter when Grandma sold him to become the only college student in the village. I came from the countryside, but he was escorted to me. Your grandma is a very good person. Because of him, I have the courage and belief to pursue my ideals. Recalling the kind and warm face, his eyes were filled with tears. Tears were shining, and the voice was choked, and he lowered his head and stuttered with wine. But I directly expose his sad disguise. He lifted you into a talent, but you left him in the countryside. You have the courage to pursue your ideals, but you give him old age without any support. You are the most hypocritical of the people I have ever met. I stood up and looked down at his blushing face because of the drunkenness. I have been angry for a long time. What happened to my grandma? Angry that they were born without raising them. But later my desire for fatherly love and motherly love overwhelmed this anger until the high fever burned me to the point of their feelings. Now, I can finally say it, I said, you are neither worthy of being parents nor children. I feel ashamed of being born in such a family. Xiaoying, how can you talk to your parents like this? My mother exclaimed and stood up. He wanted to come forward to persuade me, but his father reached out to stop me. Xiaoying is right, he said, I am not a good father or a good son. He stood up shakingly, his eyes flashed across our faces one by one, and finally frozen on Su Yao's face, and burst into tears, even if he was trapped in the countryside. He still raises you well. You are so outstanding and sensible. But what about me? My daughter I have been nurtured with all the resources is just a failure. How can I be worthy of his dead father? Many things that happened in the end made him physically and mentally exhausted. At this moment, he indulged in tears, completely ignoring Su Yao's face that had changed its expression. After discovering that his mother had also agreed to his father's words, Su Yao rushed forward and argued with them. I had finished what I wanted to say, so I turned around and left while the chaos was in the chaos. Just a few steps away, I heard the woman scream coming from behind. When I turned around, it turned out that the stove containing the barbecue was overturned, and the flames instantly rose up along the same overturned oil pot. Almost subconsciously, I ran to the nearest fire point to get the fire extinguisher. By the time we went back, our parents had already woken up and began to extinguish the fire in an orderly manner. We cooperated silently to put out a fire that could spread to a larger range and bring serious consequences without any danger. When the last ray of flames went out, my father's face was covered with gray marks, but he didn't care, but just looked at me with a fiery look. I am really my daughter, and I can always fight side by side with us. He recalled the time he had been in the war zone with his mother. The thick smoke alarmed the rangers and they called the police. On the way to filing, he wanted to sit next to me more than once. After being rejected, his burning eyes fell on me, and he seemed to have something to say to me. I ignored it. He wanted to leave after the matter was over, but they tried their best to keep me. Dad said, Xiaoying, stay, everything about yours will be yours in the future. Mom said, aren't you going to fill out your application soon? Parents can help you refer to it and send you to a better university. If you want to major in journalism, your connections will be your resource in the future. Dad said again, when you came to us, we thought you had already made up your mind. It was not until this time that we really understood you. The more we knew you, the more we were surprised. Your spirit of not giving in, like a mother who is rational and calm, and like a father. You are our daughter, the most surprising gift God has given us. Seeing that I didn't speak, my parents looked a little disappointed. They said, it's our fault that blood ties cannot be cut off. We shouldn't have ignored you before. Xiaoying, forgive your parents. When they said this, they only had me in their eyes. The fatherly love and motherly love that I once longed for the most was placed at hand, but my tone of rejection was merciless. I said, I don't need your help, I don't need your past 17 years. I still grew up without the care of my parents, and I will only live a better life in the future. In my best when you are needed, you don't show up, and you don't need to participate in my life in the future. It's not like this. We didn't mean it. This time, my mother was excited. She held my hand and her eyes were begging, Xiaoying, you don't know that you just arrived. How happy we are in this world, we wish we could give the whole world to you as a gift. But you didn't cherish me. You have other children and gave him all your love. No, you don't even love him. You are just immersed in the noble and great feeling brought to you by raising your colleagues' orphans. Only love yourself. As my voice fell, both of them were silent and irrefutable. After a long time, their voices rang again, and there was no pride and confidence they used to be. They prayed in the humblest tone, can't we really give us another chance? We obviously got along well a while ago, didn't we? But as soon as he finished speaking, Su Yao, who had been eavesdropping outside the door, finally couldn't help but rush into the room and began to make trouble and cry, he doesn't want you anymore. Why are you doing something bad? I am your daughter. She sat on the ground and cried loudly, and the scene was chaotic again. Looking at this spoiled daughter, her parents' faces were full of fatigue. In the past, in order not to lose weight, they were said to have their colleagues' orphans seized and indulged in Su Yao. Now, they can only bite the bullet and continue this mistake. This kind of days will be long, and they will continue to torture each other like this. In the future, whenever I see an excellent, silent, and sensible child, they will be reminded of what they have lost. I went to a place far away from home, and after I went to university, I completely broke off contact with them. Perhaps they still had hope for Su Yao, so they began to guard Su Yao for resuming the school. The mother even quit her job and took special care of Su Yao, which was quite a bit of a desperate attempt. Su Yao also made a promise that she would get a good score this time and would not disappoint her parents. But a year later, the result was still unsatisfactory. Su Yao only took the exam for 23 and couldn't even go to the junior college near her home. My mother rushed to the school to question her and realized that during the resuming school, Su Yao fell in love with her classmates. The time of repeating the study was originally boring and depressing, especially because she was under tremendous psychological pressure. After the other party gave her some goodwill beyond her classmates' scope, Su Yao did not hesitate and fell into it like a moth to the fire. Now, she failed the exam again, and her parents were not even thinking about blamed her, but just asked her to prepare quickly and repeat the exam for the third time. Not long after, my mother changed her cell phone number and sent me a message to express her sadness and regret. She said, I regret not cherishing you well, and I regret not educating Su Yao well. Now, I have lost my job and my life has become a mess. On every sleepless night, I think I was back then. I used to be full of your outstanding daughter. I laughed. They used to prefer Su Yao's spoiledness and willfulness. Now, this willfulness hurts their own interests, and they began to miss my sensibility and consideration again. I will never believe the love in their mouths for such people. Getting away in time is the most correct choice. Later, Su Yao ran away from home not long after the third resuming class and ran to live with the boy. This time her parents didn't even call the police. Just like that, I passed without any reason. A year later, Su Yao came back, with a more extreme and crazy mood. He stayed at home like a time bomb, torturing my parents' nerves day after day. He didn't allow my parents to mention anything about me again, otherwise he would go crazy at home. But the more he did this, the more his parents missed me. Finally, one day, Su Yao discovered that my mother had been writing letters to me. Su Yao reached out and pushed her parents down the stairs. Her father hit her head and became a vegetable. Her mother recovered not long after. After being discharged from the hospital, I insisted on sending Su Yao to prison. Later, I studied for a doctorate all the way, and I rose to the top. After hearing the news from my parents, he took the initiative to contact me. He said he didn't give me anything at home, and I wanted to don't want it, but after thinking about it, he went back. When I finally saw each other, I could hardly recognize that this was my glamorous mother. She was aged very quickly, with white hair on her temples, and when she walked, her figure was a little hunched. As soon as I saw me, my eyes lit up. I came up and wanted to hold my hand affectionately, but I avoided her suddenly lost eyes. I asked her directly what she wanted to give me. What she took out was a somewhat unfamiliar certificate. It was the award certificate for participating in the composition competition in my senior year of high school. The certificate was sent to my freshman year and was sent back with the original composition. On the title, there are square words written, my father and mother. At that time, I described my parents who loved me deeply as I imagined, a smart and gentle mother, a tolerant and indulgent father, who loved us, and had a happy home. She held this composition that she had read countless times and burst into tears. Xiaoying, Mom now knows how to be a good mother. Can you give Mom another chance? This time Mom will definitely love you well. I only love you. No need. I used to really hope that they could love me, but now I don't need it anymore. I am independent, have the ability to survive, know how to make money, and I also know to take good care of myself in days when no one cares. This is how I have lived. I won't be grateful to them. The sound of the door opening sounded, and a familiar figure walked in. It was Su Yao. After being released from prison, she still lives with her mother. She doesn't have a diploma now, and she has been in jail, can't find a job, and she is at home all day long. When she saw me from afar, she was slightly stunned, then glared at her eyes, turned to her mother, and said with a fierce tone, "The old witch, isn't there any time to cook? Do you want to starve me to death?" My mother ignored it. She just looked at me with a pleading look, hoping that I could talk to her again. But I just gently turned her hand away and did not accept her retention. Everyone has their own destiny. They choose to turn their lives into the current situation. Then let's continue to live like this in the past and regret it. And I'm different, I'll keep looking forward.